All right, got my hand up here. Got a little excited. This is Ann again, and just a few minutes ago, we took a break. I just needed to get some. What I do is I drink honey water, and honey water it's really great. Um, Jesus told me mix honey and water together and drink it. I drink it every day, and it's really really great. Um, I'm very thankful. Uh, like I mentioned in the last video, I want to talk about that I'm a woman of a trillion miracles, and I want to tell you why I'm saying this. Is because there's been a lot of things in my life, and it's not just my life, it's everybody's lives. I believe have I think a lot of people have been uh, everybody on this earth has been uh, blessed and been given a trillion miracles. Um, in my case, the trillion miracles are really big time, and I'm extremely thankful and very happy for these miracles. Um, I guess let me start off by saying, in the last video I talked about, um, I touched on my life a little bit about how I became a Catholic. And there's two, my daughter brought up something tonight that is so true about ourselves, is that um, Jesus and all heaven are a big part of our life, is our life. Being handicapped is another big part of our life, is who we are. Well, some people wouldn't say who you are, but it's, well, I say it's who we are, who I am. And then we've done volunteer work, and we've had the opportunity, which I'm going to go into here later, about being able to have a lot of friends, or be able to work with a lot of our brothers and sisters who have special needs, and I'm extremely thankful for that. And of course, my daughter and I, we've been blessed to be able to homeschool, from kindergarten until she graduated from high school. She's a college student, very proud of her. She's taking a break right now. But let me just I'm going to tiptoe a little bit, just like a short synopsis of my life a little bit, and then I'm going to show you certain things, or tell you certain things, and then you'll see what I'm talking about as far as I'm the woman with a trillion miracles. Basically, I grew up in a nice area, and I've told you I grew up in Monterey, California, and I have one brother and wonderful parents. My father, he passed away 2 years ago. He's up in heaven. My family's out west, and we're currently living here in North Carolina, and this is where my husband's family's from. My daughter was born in Oklahoma, and at that time my husband was stationed, he was active duty military. He was active duty, he's army, he was active duty army, and of course right now he's retired military. And so I basically I went through kindergarten through 6th grade, graduated from elementary school, went through junior high, graduated from went from 7th grade to 9th grade. Graduated from high school, um, and went through 10th grade through 12th grade, and then after that. We got our first, thanks to, and I want to thank you, Ophelia. Ophelia's up in heaven. She's my godmother. Um, but I'm thankful that she, you know, pushed me, encouraged me to go ahead and get a job during the summertime, because in the fall I was going to attend, community college. And so with that, we had the normal first job, which is I worked at a fast food place, and I liked it. I liked it. I won't tell you which company, but they're a good company. And then after that, in the fall, I started community college, and I continued working. So what it was is like I would go to school during the day and then work at night, and so this pattern continued. I go from one job to another, and they were good jobs. I had jobs where I worked as a teacher's assistant at the community college, teaching students how to type, even though I couldn't type very fast. But the teacher I had, she was really nice and offered me a paid position. So I did that part time, and then then we took courses at the college, and then I'll be honest with you, when we were in community college for those 2 years, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I just honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so then we at that time we started doing volunteer work. And what we enjoy, there's a really nice convalescent hospital there in Monterey. And what we did, we started off doing volunteer work, and we got to know the activities director. And what we enjoyed doing was we used to go from like room to room to room, and we used to like to go visit the patients. And it's a good feeling when you're helping people. It makes you feel alive. I don't know how to describe it to you. Even I don't care how busy you are or how young you are, it just makes you feel alive. It's like you feel like you're doing something. You feel like you got your hands in you're doing something good. And so we were visiting patients. Sometimes I would play the piano there, and then they offered me a part-time position to be like a part-time nurse, which I did just for a short time. And then it was really great. And then one time when I was there, this man came in. His name was Paul, and he would come in and he would show movies to the clients there at the convalescent hospital. And a lot of the clients, patients that were there, were suffering from many different medical problems, Alzheimer's, dementia, heart problems, different things. And so but the patients I liked to visit the most were I loved all the patients, but the ones that really felt like we were like making a difference, we would go visit the patients who were what I call in a vegetative state, and because sometimes when people go out and volunteer, sometimes they want to be with some of the patients that can talk a lot or a little more active. And but at that time frame, I was talking with Paul, and he says, well, how would you like to get a job at this other place where I work part-time? And it was a center for developmentally disabled adults. And basically that means adults who are 18 and over who who for are, when I say developmentally disabled, some people use the term mentally retarded. Um, basically people with certain types of brain damage. We had the people. They had what it was. It was a really great center because they had like about 45 live-in clients, and then during the day they had like a workshop underneath, and the workshop took in I don't know, there might have been 100 to 200 people would come in, and they would work all day, and they would get paid a certain wage, and so Paul talked to me about it, and I grew interested because I'll be really honest, I really love to help people, and especially people with special needs. I had a big interest in it, and my mom was trying to figure it out because, you know, as far as she knew, except for one cousin that I know of that was born with Down syndrome and passed away, we really didn't have a lot of handicapped people in our family. So, you know, my mom was trying to figure it out, and it was like, and of course, as I mentioned in my last video, you know, how, you know, we married Jesus, known heaven, became Catholic, Christians, and very, very thankful, very, very thankful for that, just, you know. But, so anyway, so I went ahead, and a friend of mine came with me. She was my friend in high school, Georgette, and we applied at the center. And of course, at that time I was in college. I was taking college courses. I was in my, I believe I was in my first year of college, going on to my second. And he says, well, sure. He says, you know, we do shift work here. So the center had 3 different shifts. So I would be working like the 3:30 shift till about 11:30 shift. And I would be doing like living skills where, you know, I would help. I'd get a group of clients, and I would be like kind of a supervisory or helping position where, you know, with eating skills or, you know, living skills type thing, make sure everything was in order. And then I also was hired to teach a sewing class, as well as an exercise class, which I'm not too really good at either one of them, but, you know, the director was nice enough to hire me. And so it was a full-time job, and then we were also trying to go to school full-time. So I'm not going to lie to you, it was, even though I was younger, I was 19, 20 years old, it was like, it was crazy. It was just, you know, it was a busy schedule. But the thing is, I worked at this center for a year, and a lot of clients had multiple handicaps. Some, I knew a young man who was deaf. I knew another young man. There's quite a few clients that they were developmentally disabled, as well as having a mental illness, and sometimes quite a few clients had seizures, either, you know, petite like mall or grand mal seizures, the big seizures. And so a lot of the clients had multiple handicaps, and then some had just the one. We had nice clients who were had Down syndrome, and everyone who lived there in the center, as well as came in for the workshops, these are all, you know, are very special brothers and sisters, because they are, to me, I see them as, you know, the beautiful, like beautiful heavenly angels on earth. They are so, they are smart, they are special, they're beautiful, and it was an honor to be able to work there. I felt so alive. when I was working there. And, you know, I tend to think that we made a lot of friends there. And it was during this time that they had a handicap dance. And at this handicap dance, um, I won't give out his name. I'm trying to keep it private, but I met a young man who had cerebral palsy, and he was on crutches, and he could slide on crutches, but he also used a power chair, wheelchair. He lived in another city, and we became friends. So we stayed in touch. And so at that time, we worked there for about a year, and we continued to go to college. But as soon as we quit the job, for some reason my voice went out. I lost my voice for about 2-3 weeks. And we went to the doctor. There was no physical explanation for it. My throat's fine. And then my mom, dad, they were told, take me to a psychiatrist. I had one visit, and he said it's psychological. Something's made her, her voice is gone. And then one day we were driving down the highway, and someone cut in front of me, and I got upset, and then my voice came back out. And then at that point, when that happened, I had signed up for a signing class, how to do signing. But the problem was, it was hard for me because in school, how do you want to say it? It's like my brother, he always had straight A's. And me, no matter how hard I studied, I could get A's, but it was rare. Usually I was a BC student. I would get a grade good enough to pass, but just, not high grades. And so my mom used to joke with me, say, well, you just have a lazy brain. I said, yeah, that's probably what it is. I just have a lazy brain. And so, I didn't think much about it. And then, so then we graduated. It took us 2.5 years instead of 2 years because we were working and going to college, and we had some good jobs. I mean, we even worked for City Hall for a short time, worked for the front desk and everything. It was great. And but it took us 2.5 years, and we got our AA degree. And then they had a special satellite program that my mom found out about, where the university was coming. They would send teachers to our area, and I could get a BA degree in that area, but they only had one major. It was a special deal. They were trying out the satellite program where normally I would have to be almost 2 hours away from home to be on campus, but this way I could stay at home with my parents, and I wanted to stay home with my parents. And the teachers would come down to the Monterey area, and it was basically Monday through Thursday. Might have been, yeah, I think it was Monday through Thursday. It was like 4 days, and it was like you would go, like like I would work during the day, and then it was like night school. You would go to class from 6 till about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, 4 nights a week, and they would bring the textbooks to you and everything, and it was cheaper than living on campus. It was cheaper than going to campus, and it was closer to home, so I was extremely thankful. The only thing is, it was just one major. And since I didn't know what I wanted to do, by the time I had the AA degree in my hand, I didn't know what I wanted to do. The major was in education, being a teacher, being able to teach kindergarten through high school. So I said, yeah, well, why not? And let's do it. I wasn't the best with little kids. I didn't think I was, because you have to look at it. I was picked on in school real bad, so my experience with just, even my fellow students wasn't good. So, but I said, let's do it. So then we started going to, I call it the Satellite University, which is really way ahead of its time, because we're looking at, this was the late 70s, early 80s. So it was really great. and I continued working different jobs, and then I continued to have a friendship with my friend I met at the handicap dance. He had cerebral palsy. And then what happened was, he was in 19, I was about 22 years old, and um, there was a little bit of a conflict at home, and so I ended up, I moved out. What it is, I got angry, and my parents had, they had bought me a car. They had bought my brother a car, which was, my parents, my mom's really great with money, and they were just very, very generous. You know, even though I was working and going to college, my parents paid, for our college. You know, they took care of that, and so I'm really, really grateful, to Jesus now in heaven for that. I'm thankful to my parents for that. So we, so at that point, I was like, I was about almost like I was pretty much like about a semester away from graduating, getting my 4-year degree. And of course, the courses were getting harder. I'm not gonna lie to you. But what happened is I had a blowout. I got angry, and then it was one night I threw everything in the back of my car. I had like a little Chevy Chevette. I opened up the hatchback. I threw everything, and everything means just clothes and my stereo system. I had to have my stereo system and my records and my clothes. Drove down the road, and then I was trying to figure out where to go, where to go. And you see, most of my relatives were down in Southern California, or overseas, so, where to go. So then I remembered I was driving, and I says, I'm going to go to my buddy's house, and I'm going to call him Michael. So I said, I'm going to Michael's house. So he lived in another city about a half hour away. So I drove up to I drove up to his apartment. He was in Section 8 house. Well, no, he was in an apartment, and he was born with cerebral palsy, and in my opinion, I'm going to take. He had a severe case of cerebral palsy. Normally, he would have been pretty much wheelchair bound, but he had multiple surgeries when he was younger. He's been through a lot, and then, but he said he wanted to be able to stand, and I found out later he went through state rehab, and they did testing on him, and he had a 200 IQ. I kid you not, he was very, very smart. He was way smarter than me. I can tell you that right. He was way smarter than me, and at that time, I thought I had a normal IQ. I'll be quite frank with you. Later on, I'm going to tell you how things changed. But anyway, so then I knocked on his door, and he was able to swing on crutches, but, usually he used his power chair or wheelchair. And I said, Michael, can I please stay with you for a while? And he said, sure. And so for the next year and a half, Michael and I, we stayed together. We were like brother and sister. We were just like really, really tight. I mean, it's like we're like brother and sister. He's very smart. He was very sharp looking, very good looking, dark hair, blue eyes, but I just didn't have that type of feeling for him. But he has such a good soul, such a beautiful heart and soul. He allowed me to stay, and so he found me a part-time job, and then through that, I was able to get a couple more part-time jobs, and then we put all our money together. And we were just, for like a year and a half, we just kind of did things. And at that point, I was during my pretty much my last semester of college, I went to class one day, and I just I just didn't want to be there. I don't know how to describe it to you. Just like, maybe it was, I don't know what it was. I just lost interest, and so I dropped out, and that was very, very difficult. My mom was, my parents were, they wanted me, everybody wants, I was like, just like a semester, maybe even 2 semesters away, and, and I told my mom, well, and actually they were disappointed, and I said, well, I'll go back later. I'll go back later. And I'm going to tell you something, a word of advice. If you're in college, stay in college, finish up, because it's, when you say you're going to come back, in my case, I didn't come back to finish off the BA, and so I wish I had finished up, but I didn't. And so if I could give some word of advice to you, finish up. But after that, I, through Michael, he had a lot of friends, and so I got a chance to meet a lot of nice friends who had cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, different types of handicap. I met a young man who was blind. I met another young man who had been burned real bad. I met a lot of people with different types of disabilities. Very, 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 very nice people. And I met them at a junior college, or sometimes I met them personally through, I met a young lady who's really, really nice, and she had cerebral palsy. And so I met a lot of nice people through Michael. And so, he's just his whole family, him and his very special family. We were talking about Michael actually the other night, and I was kind of talking to my daughter about Michael. And so anyway, after that, during the time we decided to go to, back to a community college. I was going to take just a course like in jazzercise. And of course, I've never been good in PE. I don't know why. I couldn't run right. There was something wrong with my legs. I don't know what it was. I had problems. But I decided it was during the early 80s. Everybody was in the exercise kind of mode. It was time of flash dance and everything. Everybody wanted to be, get in the exercise mode, eat good, eat healthy, that type of thing. Coffee shops started opening. It's a little bit like the way it is now. It's interesting. Very similar. It was like eat healthy, keep everything green and clean. And I'm not criticizing it. It's just the way it was at that time frame. And of course, even me, I still look like I got the 80s hairdo right now. In fact, I was joking. My daughter was joking with me. She says I look like what is it you call those rock groups, the hair bands. I look like I come out of a hair band. But anyway, at that time, about that time when I was taking the class, there was a man in the class, and I'll change his name. I'll just call him Billy. And he took an interest in me, and I wasn't used to that because, like I mentioned in my last video, all through junior high, all through 6th grade, junior high, and high school, I was picked on, called ugly. You don't have much of a figure. Believe me, I was picked on really, really bad about my looks, and just it was horrible. So, needless to say, I didn't have tons of dates. I did not have tons of dates. So when Billy showed an interest in me, we started talking and everything, and then within 3 days, and I mean, I should have been smarter, but you know, when you're 22, you know, you're still pretty young, and within 3 days, he bought me an engagement ring, and I was fascinated by the ring. I was looking at the ring. I think it was about a third of a carat, and see, Billy was 5 years older than me, and he already had he had a state job. It was a good paying job, and so he bought me a nice engagement ring, and I kept looking at the ring. I was fascinated. I just kept looking at it. I never had a ring like that, and of course, you know, I didn't take it real seriously when it meant to be engaged, which means you're going to be married. You know, just bear with me. I mean, you're probably thinking, yeah, it's pretty stupid. But really, I just, you know, I just wasn't thinking. I was so excited about the moment. And of course, he was, you know, in my opinion, he was considered cute looking. You know, a lot of girls thought he was cute looking. He had a nice car. He's renting a nice place. Seemed like he had the whole package. And his personality was very, very outward. You know, I mean, I talk a lot, but he made me look like I was silent. I mean, he was very outward, very outward. So everybody liked him. And then we were engaged, and then after that, you know, we got married. We went to Reno. We got married there. We didn't get married because he was. In fact, I don't really know what his religious background is, even to this day. I like to believe he believes in God, but I don't really know his whole religious background. So we got married, and but then all of a sudden, and I'm going to be very frank with you, problems started. Problems were already there, but you know, sometimes you don't want to see it. But there was domestic abuse. I got, you know, physically abused and verbally abused, psychologically abused. He started having problems himself with, you know, drinking and other things, and so it was just, everything was going downhill, and it was really tough because, you know, I loved him in my own way, but naturally, you know, I love Jesus and I haven't, you know, in that very special way. I love Jesus in that very special way, and so, you know, it just started going downhill. And then, so then at that point, by the time I was about 25, went ahead and filed for divorce. And then, you know, during that time, I was working off and on. I was going back and forth. So again, you know, I was working back and forth. I just continued to work back and forth. And then, this is even during the time I was married to Billy. Then after that, I joined a, you know, it's not easy to meet people. You know, in California, you got 38 million people. It's not easy to meet people. And back in that time, even at the age of 25, I was considered to be cute, but I wasn't considered to be pretty or beautiful. It's one of those type of things. You know, they categorize you as like, you know, you're like, I was like a little bit above average, but I was like kind of cute, but I wasn't considered pretty or beautiful. So it was just one of those type of things. And so I joined a dating club, and what it was, there was an ad in the magazine, and you paid $20, and they would give you a person's name and phone number, and so then they would try to match you up. You'd fill out an application. They'd try to match you up with someone who was compatible with you. So I joined. It was good for 6 months. So I went on a ton of dates, but you know, every time I met someone, I met them in a public place. You have to be careful. I had my own car, my own money, the keys, everything, and I would meet them like at a pizza place or a coffee shop. And so, you know, and I met a bunch of nice people. They're really, really nice people. And then I joined a second time, and during the second round, another $20, and joined the second round. This was getting towards 1986. I and of course I was continuing, I was working during the day, and then, trying to date people at night. Um, I wasn't, sex was, I let everybody know, no sex. And I know you're probably thinking, well, that's, but I let them know. I wanted to find out. The reason, even when I met the person, I'd say no sex because, like, I wanted to see who was truly interested in me. Who was truly interested in me. I didn't want it to be something like, one night and then they're gone. I was looking for someone who was serious. So, so then the second round, I dated quite a few people, and then that's how I met Jack. And for Jack, it was hard for him to meet people because he was in the military and he was in the barracks and he was new to California, and so it's hard to meet people. It is. So then Jack and I, we started dating, and then we had, we got along pretty good. And then after about 3-4 months, he got me an engagement ring. But I figured if things don't work out, I can still pull out. Because after the first marriage, it was, I was still getting over Billy. And so Jack and I were engaged for about 3 years. And then we found out he was going to go over to Korea. And I says, boy, if he goes to Korea, I'm going to lose Jack, and I don't want to lose Jack. Jack was my best friend. He was like my brother. He's my best friend. We were dating all the time. We were very close. It's like, I love him in a special way. And it's like, I didn't want to lose Jack. So I remember that day I was at my godmother's house and I was talking with Jack. He was out in the field. And I said, Jack, let's get married. And he says, when? He says, in about 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks, instead of the normal 1 year, we were able to, now see, prior to this, we went to what we call like an engagement encounter with the Catholic Church. So if you went to this 1 weekend engagement encounter, it took care of the 6 months of counseling. So we had done that already. So by the time I said, hey, let's get married in 6 weeks, we could do that. We didn't have to go to 6 months of counseling within the church. And Jack was nice enough. Jack at that time, he was Southern Baptist, and so he was nice enough to, say, I let him know he was nice enough to get married in the Catholic Church. I was thankful that, he was, really good about, getting married in the Catholic Church. And so we got married. And then we got our first apartment, and then we started moving from place. We stayed in the same. We were in California. We stayed near my parents, but and then one of the last places is we were trying to buy a place, and California is really expensive. Monterey at that time was very expensive, and the cheapest thing we could find was a small condo, and so we barely were able to afford that. I mean, we barely squeezed in. And then everything was going really great. And then at that time, about 2 years later, Jack had orders to go to Oklahoma. And so the original plan was he was probably going to get an early retirement, and because at the time they were starting to do early retirements at that time. And then I would, stay in California, and I was a half an hour away from my parents. And I figured, well, I'd go ahead and just work part-time or whatever, just, go to school, whatever. I was taking an accounting course, and we were doing real good. And then all of a sudden, when Jack left to go to Oklahoma, one night I was trying to clean up the condo. I was trying to move some furniture, and that night I just got really, really sick. Something went up my spine. My heart was pounding. I thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden, my legs started giving out. And then my dad, my mom, I called my dad, my mom. They came right away. And then my dad, I started staying with my parents. And we would check on the condo like once a week, but I kept going in and out of the emergency room. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what it was. And then they said, well, we think you have panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, bad nerves. So they gave me some medication. Seemed like I calmed down a bit, but there was still something wrong with me. And so I called the hospital there. Is the base that my husband was stationed. It was shutting down in California, and so Jack called me and I says, look, can you pick me up and can you pick me up and take me to Oklahoma, because the Army hospital here is shutting down, and it was part of the base closure time. And so we went to, he came, he got me. We went to Oklahoma. Missed my parents bad. It was rough, but because I'd never lived outside of California, and so here I was, 33 years old, and but anyway, so then we got to Oklahoma, and I continued to be sick. So it was like almost every night. I mean, I was in the emergency room almost every night, and I think they couldn't find out what it was. They had tons of blood tests, everything, and then finally, we went to a patient representative, and then we found out the top doctor of the hospital. They were pretty much fed up with seeing me in the emergency. I was in the ER almost every night, and I appreciate everything the doctors did, but I knew I was a burden, not to just them, my husband as well. I mean, it was just, I couldn't put my finger on it. I wasn't, my muscles, everything was acting up. My leg was starting to drag. It was just everything. I wasn't feeling well. And then, so then they decided to go ahead, and the doctor, when I saw him, he thought I was just crazy. He said, oh, this lady's just crazy. And I think he was thinking, oh, she's just loony bins. And so he said, I tell you what, we'll do a CT scan of your brain. He said, actually, we'll do an MRI of your brain. And so they went ahead and did an MRI of my brain. Then about a day or two later, I get a phone call from the same doctor, and his voice is shaking. He's got a quivery voice. And then he says, look, there's something with your brain. And I said, what is it? He says, well, as we get older, your brain tends to shrink anyway. I said, well, what do you mean? I was 33 years old, and then he says, well, at the time he knew about it, I was 34. And then all of a sudden, they asked me to come in, and then I'm going to show you, if you, Rose, I don't know if you could see it. I want to make sure they could see. If you look at these,
Yep.
Okay, if you look at these bottom images here, at the top, you see the dark areas at the top of the brain. That's missing gray matter. And the dark part up here at the top of the, at the top of the head, that's like fluid. They believe at one time it might have been blood, but the brain should go all the way pretty much up to the top. And so anyway, they showed my husband and I these x-rays, the MRI x-rays, and I was in a state of shock. My husband was in a state of shock. The doctor says he was shocked. He told me, the brain doctor said he had shown my MRIs to a group of colleagues, and they all thought that, he says, well, they thought, this person was a dead person. And they were joking and laughing, saying, why are you showing us an MRI of a dead person? And he says, no, this is not a dead person. It's a woman. She's 34 years old, and she's sitting in my office. And, and he says, nobody was laughing then. And then after that, we start seeing a whole series of neurologists, neurosurgeons. We had one MRI done after another one. We went to a different hospital, and this hospital tried different MRI machines. They all looked the same, and they all knew. They said, well, you've had this since you were young. They couldn't put an age to it, but they said, you've had this since you were young. And they says, one person basically told me, by the time we came to North Carolina, the one doctor says, usually people who have something like this are either they're not living or they're in a vegetative state. And so at this time, I've been diagnosed with two anxiety disorders, and of course the severe brain damage. And my muscles were starting to get weaker, and so that's why I mentioned in my video the other day, I use a quad cane for short distances and a wheelchair for longer distances. And then about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was diagnosed with leukemia. And during that time, they wanted to get an MRI done because of the chemotherapy that I would be getting. And so I put it off, and then I did it when my family was there, and this time they did it with contrast. And I was laying in the bed. We were there, the first round, we were there for about a month and a half, 6 weeks, because I had to get 2 different types of chemotherapy, because the first set didn't work too well. The second one worked pretty good. They were telling me it was working pretty good. And I remember the day when they came in. They says, well, my MRI, apparently everyone on the floor knew about it because they had heard about this type of brain. Everybody was in shock, and then I was told that they didn't tell me straight to my face, but the neurology team came, and I kind of overheard the top person mention, well, by the time she gets done with chemotherapy, she's going to be stuck in a wheelchair. I kind of heard that. And so naturally, I want to be as active as possible, as mobile as possible. It's, we're trying to, we're praying hard, we're begging that, number one, that we can live, that we won't die, and we're and it's not just for us, but for everybody. Everybody on the floor, everybody. And then also, we like to be able to still walk. So the reason why I'm telling you about this is because what the hospital found out after all these years, what they found out in 2013 was that I was born with this brain condition. And so when I told you earlier in this video about, the story of my life, when you think about the fact that, I heard a doctor say, usually people like this are either dead or they're in the vegetative state. And then the hospital tells me in 2013, we believe, and that you were born with this severe brain damage. I think about all the wonderful things since before I was born, and even to this day, the fact that we are this, the fact that we are this healthy, that we're alive, able to move. We're not, we can still walk, a certain distance without a wheelchair. The fact that I'm just, to be able to go to school, to go to college, to do volunteer work, for my daughter and I to do homeschooling, for us to be able to do volunteer work. In fact, from 2007 until 2013, our whole family, we did some volunteer work. We would do like 2 Saturdays a month. And what we would do for 2 hours on each Saturday, we would do what you call the radio reading. And what the radio reading is that we would, there'd be 2 people going into, it's basically you're going into like a radio station. It's like a radio station, and you have a mic and everything, and we're reading the newspaper, the local newspaper, and some people read books, but we're reading the local newspaper to people who are blind or physically handicapped. And later on I found out from my daughter that the radio station covered quite a few miles. So she was telling me, Mom, I believe that when you guys were, doing the radio, whenever we were, we did this 2 Saturdays a month for about 6 years. And my daughter was a big help. Believe me, she was a big help as well. When we were doing this, she says, you and Dad, you reached at least, in her estimate, close to maybe 1,000 people, maybe 2,000 people every time we read the newspaper. And of course, they also recorded the readings as well, so they could play it at a later time. So not only were we doing live radio, but we were also being recorded to be, so people could listen at a later time. So I felt like, as a family, we were doing something really special. I felt like we were doing something really great. Felt like, hey, this is what I like. And at the same time, my daughter and I were doing homeschooling, which felt like we worked together as a team. There was no teacher and pupil. We worked together as a team. I mean, she was learning and I was learning. We were both learning. And so it was great. I mean, it was a fun experience, and, it was really great. But you know what? We kept it. We did everything we were supposed to do. We did everything by regulation. We did attendance records. She took an SAT, or basically a CAT test, every year. I sent it into the state. We did everything proper that we were supposed to do. 6 subjects every day. We covered 6 subjects. We ordered the best curriculum we could get. And the curriculum was about $600 per year, but it was the best curriculum you could get. It was from a university. And so it's a Christian-based curriculum. It was a really good curriculum. College-level material, and I can tell you that because being in college, I recognize college-level material. So it was some hard material. But what I'm trying to say is the fact that I'm able to talk to you and smile at you, and and my daughter's doing all the recording and everything. I'm just simply talking and looking in this camera. But the fact that we've been able to do all these things and be able to go to church and go shopping and be able to do everything, just to be a mom, to be a wife, to have been able to work at jobs, to do everything, sure, like when we go on trips, we go to Disney World, I'm in my wheelchair, but I'm thankful to be there. We go to the mall, I'm in my wheelchair, but thankful to be there. We're trying to keep a very positive slant on everything. Don't get me wrong, I know the type of cancer I have is a scary cancer. I'm not going to lie to you. And so, every day, I think about it. I do. I think about it. I cannot help but think about it. And my family thinks about it. So we're praying and begging, not just the best for me and for my daughter and my husband, but I'm praying for everybody. I'm praying that for everybody who's sick or has something that is, I'm just praying for everybody. I don't want nobody to be sick. I don't want anybody dying. I just want the best for everybody. And I truly mean that. And I told the doctor, we are truly a woman with a trillion miracles. And I believe everybody truly is. a person with a trillion miracles, you know, and I really want you to know that if anybody watches this video, that, you know, that I really honestly, you know, I've come from a very interesting background where, you know, I'm a person who, you know, didn't go to church when I was younger and then went to church. I've been in many different things, and I'm thankful that we've been, you know, in many different places and different experiences. And we've lived in California, Oklahoma, North Carolina. We've visited many states. And I'm very thankful for that, because pretty much everyone I meet is just a really nice person. I truly believe what Anne Frank said is true, that really everybody is truly good at heart. It's true. Everybody is truly good at heart. And so I'm praying that Jesus now in heaven will return. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm praying and begging that will happen. I want to see good things for everybody all around the world and the United States, because I love this country. I'm thankful to be an American, and thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be alive. I thank Jesus now in heaven for everything. If it wasn't for Jesus now in heaven, I would not be alive. I would not have anything. I would not be, you know, everything I say, or, you know, if it's good, everything, you know, when something's bad, that's my sin. But anything that good that you see come out of me, and I'm thankful to be an instrument. I'm so thankful that I'm an instrument of Jesus now in heaven, and allowed to be so. And so, you know, I'm thankful to have, you know, wonderful, wonderful, beautiful children. I'm thankful to, you know, have a wonderful, you know, husband down here. I'm just thankful for everything, and I just wanted you to know why at the beginning of this video I said I'm a woman of a trillion miracles. There's a lot more stuff that has happened, but later on I might touch on that a little bit more. But I wanted you to know that in future videos I will be talking a lot more, you know, about, you know, religious